Hey everybody, we are going to be continuing on with trigonometry, and so the big thing for today is that you're going to need a calculator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you can use your calculator to evaluate the different trig functions, and then we're not going to worry about finding missing angles in this video, but we will then learn how to find the missing sides in a right triangle. So the first part, good news for you. This is what you had to do for trigonometry in the past. You had to consult a table in your book, and for example, if I wanted to know what is the sine of 15 degrees, I would have to follow the table and then find that value and know that if I were to make a triangle, here's 15 degrees, and then the opposite and the hypotenuse were going to make a ratio that was equal to 0.2588. Good news is that we'll be using our calculators. You won't need to be consulting a table repeatedly. I'm not going to ever require you to consult a table. However, what I am going to do though is I just wanted to point out a reminder here. So I'm going to use, let's say, cosine of 60 as an example. There's 60 degrees. Here's cosine. So I got ahead of myself, but I circled 0.5. I just wanted to remind you something. So again, cosine of 60 degrees, it says 0.5, but I'm going to write it as 1/2. That's a reminder that any triangle where you have 60 degrees, you know then that you're going to have the cosine is the adjacent according to SOHCAHTOA. You're going to have the adjacent and the hypotenuse are always going to be in the ratio of 1 to 2. So we've got that triangle there, 1x to 2x. So some other triangles that could be made then that still have a 60-degree angle, I'm making this one larger on purpose because I could say, well, if this is 5, then we know that that hypotenuse had to be 10 according to this angle 60 degrees. We could make a smaller triangle. If I say that's 60, if I knew that the hypotenuse of this was going to be 0.4, well then the side at the bottom was required to be 0.2, because for each of these, cosine of 60 was equal to 5/10. This one down here, cosine of 60 is equal to 0.2 over 0.4. We're always supposed to have a ratio of 1/2. Okay, so I've tried to figure out how to show you how to do this with your calculator. So I've got two things. I've got the images here, and then I'm going to cut away. There's going to be a different video where I'm going to demonstrate at least on my calculator, which is a TI-84. But then hopefully that will give you a little bit of an idea of how you're supposed to use these. Also, I'm delighted I finally get to use white for once. So on the TI-84s, you're going to notice right here that it says sine, cosine, tangent. So those are the buttons that you are going to press then in order to calculate this. What you will do is you just need to push one of them. I'm just going to show here. You're going to, like, if I wanted to find cosine of 60, I would just type cosine 60 and then hit enter, and that should get me 0.5 as an answer. If it doesn't, then the problem is that your calculator is probably in radians. And radians just means then that your answer is related to pi. Whereas what we want is degrees. And so when I cut away, I'm going to demonstrate how you can determine if your calculator is in degrees or in radians. So the next thing, if you happen to have a TI-89, yours are going to be located here where you've got Y, Z, and I'm having a hard time seeing a T. And what you will need to do in order to calculate this is that you have to first hit your second button, and then you're going to select whichever one of these you wanted. So again, that will be second, and then you want to do either Y, Z, or T. Now, good luck for the people with the Inspires. No, actually, I'm joking. I did down here at the bottom explain how you are going to do that. For people with the TI Inspire, you actually just type in whichever one you need right there on your keypad. One thing also for the TI Inspire is that if you need to switch between radians and degrees, I did learn that you need to push your home button, and then you're going to go to your settings. So if you're still a little bit confused, I've included some links on Schoology to help you so that you can find all the things that you need for your calculator. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut away. I'm going to show you how to change the settings in your calculator, and then also how you can tell whether you are in radian mode or if you are in degree mode. So as I was saying, there's going to be a couple ways that you can check how to see if your calculator is in radians or degrees. And the first way is by just checking something easy that we need to know, like sine of 30 degrees. So when we hit enter, I can see that that is definitely not 1/2 like what I wanted. So what I need to do then is I'm going to go to my mode, and when I scroll down, I notice, yes, indeed, I have radians highlighted. And so I needed to move over to degrees, change that. And then now when I try that again, I do get 1/2. Some of you may have noticed as well, and fortunately our new calculators happen to do this. It even mentions to you on the screen what you are in already. So before, I had it in radians, and up there my calculator said radians, and when I switch it to degrees, it'll switch to degrees as well. And so that's another way. For our class and for IM3, you are going to spend, or I'm sorry, let me correct that. For our class, we're going to spend a lot of the time using degrees. For IM3, you get then to kind of a blend, half degrees, half radians. And then when you get to calculus, it's going to be almost entirely radians. Okay, so I kind of already demonstrated this. Just a really big reminder. Always check to see whether your calculator is in radians or degrees. I would say the biggest mistake people make with trigonometry is that they don't pay attention to their calculators. They get answers that don't make sense, and then they have no idea how to, they don't recognize that they have made a mistake, and then they turn it in and it's wrong. For what it's worth, I will be lenient with grading. I will keep an eye out if you happen to have your calculator in the wrong mode. If you get an answer wrong, usually the first thing I do is I just switch my calculator to the other mode, and then I use that to check if it was right or wrong. Okay, so moving on now. Since we have learned how to use our calculators to solve these, I want you now to go ahead and calculate all of these values. So pause the video, answer them, and then when you are done, I will demonstrate to you the correct answers. Okay, now that you have done that, I am going to show you what you should have gotten for these. And I downloaded a bunch of calculators onto my tablet here. I still don't quite know which one is the best one. I'm just going to select this one because I think, okay, you get to see the inch. Oh, nope. That was bad. I didn't want to be paying that. No, actually, I don't know if my tablet, I don't know if I can go sideways with my tablet on that one. So I'm going to try this. Yeah, this will be better now. Okay, so first thing, always make sure if you're in the correct mode. For me, I know that I can check right here, and DEG means that I'm in degrees. So the first one was sine of 22. I just need to type that in, and it says 0.3746. And we were not told what to round it to. I would say just use at least 3 decimal places for these. Please don't round it to 0.4. That's not accurate at all. I think 4 decimal places for this will be good. Okay, now the next one is cosine of 43. So I'm not going to keep going back and forth. Eventually, I'm just going to use my own calculator instead of demonstrating to you. It should be pretty straightforward on how to type these in. Cosine of 43 is 0.7313. Okay, and then we're just going to continue on with the rest of them. Like I said, I'm just going to use my own calculator to type these in so that we can speed this up. So the next one, we get 0.5543. For cosine of 88, that is 0.0349. Sine of 14, 0.2419. Cosine of 38 is 0.788, and then it's 0.1, so we're just going to round that to 0. Tangent 77, ooh, we finally get one larger than 1. It's 4.3315. And then finally, cosine of 80, 0.1736, excuse me. I'm going to fix that 3. It's kind of ugly there. Okay. Not bad. Now, the next thing that we're going to do, I'm going to show you as well. If you ever need to find cosecant, secant, or cotangent with your calculator, some of you are going to be lucky enough that you do have those. I think the Inspire, I think you will be able to solve these, so that's one advantage that you have. However, for the other calculators, you typically don't have these programmed in there. In that case, what we're going to have to do is we just need to remember what these are equal to. Well, cosecant of 44 is the same thing as 1 over sine of 44. So in your calculator, that's what you're going to type in. And when you do 1 divided by sine of 44 in your calculator, you should get 1.4396. Then for the second one, we have secant of 44. That is the same thing as 1 over cosine of 44. Type that into your calculator, and you get 1.3902. And then our last one is cotangent, and I think that's a little odd that it's saying that we need to do 65 instead of 44 like all the others. That's going to be 1 over tangent of 65. And that ends up being 0.4663. Oops. Okay. Now we're getting into what is most associated with trigonometry, solving for missing angles and missing sides. Now, I told you earlier at the beginning we are not going to find missing angles today, but instead we're going to focus just on finding our missing sides. So if we have to find x in this picture, what we need to do first is we have to identify the 3 sides in our triangle. So the hypotenuse, remember, is always across from the right angle. The opposite side is always across from the angle theta that was given. And then adjacent will be found in between the right angle and the angle theta that we have. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the 3 sides of my triangle, and I notice that I don't have anything written for that opposite side there. So I'm going to ignore that. That is not necessary in order to solve this question. That leaves me with the adjacent and the hypotenuse. And from SOHCAHTOA, adjacent and hypotenuse is found with cosine. So we will set up an equation. Cosine of theta is equal to the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And now we're just going to fill in the values that we have. Our angle is 20 degrees, so it's cosine of 20. The adjacent side is x, and the hypotenuse is 15. So we're going to put x over 15. Now, when I've taught this in the past, there's been a lot of confusion with how we are supposed to solve this. So I do this every single time whenever I'm teaching it. I take my cosine of 20 and I put it over 1. And the reason for that is because then we can cross multiply. We're going to do 15 times cosine of 20 is equal to x times 1, which is just x. And then in your calculator, you can find what cosine of 20 is, and that is 0.9397. And that is going to be equal to x. Now, one thing I want you to be aware of. In your work, write 0.9397. But in your calculator, I do not want you to be rounding to that. I want you instead then to use the exact value. And here's the reason why. So I'm going to demonstrate two different answers here. I'm going to show what happens when you get the exact value in your calculator, and I'm going to show you what happens when you round it. So if we were to round, and you say, okay, 15.9397, that is going to be 14.0955. Now, if you kept the exact value, though, and you do that times 15, you are going to get 14.0954. And I think a lot of you are probably looking at this and thinking, well, what's the big deal? This and this aren't that far off. That shouldn't be an issue. Okay, I agree with you. But let's say you remove one of the decimal places and then you calculate it. Now you're telling me 0.939 times 15 is equal to that. You get 14.085. Now you're 1/100th off from the correct answer. That's still kind of close, but not as good. Let's say you get lazy again. You're like, you know what? I'm going to cut off another decimal place. I'm going to just say it's 0.93. 0.93 times 15, that's 13.95. These aren't even close. Well, I mean, you're going to say that's like about 0.15 off, but that's getting less and less accurate. There's one thing I want to show you. It kind of became a joke between me and some of my students then from the past, like in IM3. So what I am going to do is I'm going to show you one of my favorite memes. That right there. The bridge fail. This is what happens when you round too early in your work, is that your answer is not going to match up with the correct answer. Now, I'm going to admit this picture is actually very fake, but the point remains. It's that I don't want you rounding numbers early in your work. I want you to try to keep exact values whenever possible. Going back to your work, this thing that I said right here, yes, when you write it on the paper, it's okay if you round it. But in your calculator, I want you to keep the exact value whenever possible. That's going to get you better answers. They're going to be more similar to what I have. I'm less likely to take off points. You're less likely to be wrong. So that is a huge recommendation for me when you are solving these questions. I erased all of that. I'm not entirely sure why I did. But anyway, what I do want you to get is... Oh, that's where I want. Okay. This is going to be the correct answer. That's the answer that I expect to see from you. All right, now that I'm done with my rant, we can go back to our regularly scheduled program. So, go ahead. I want you to solve for x here. Pause the video. When you are done, start it up again, and I'll show you how to solve it. Okay, so what you should do, remember, is label all your sides of your triangle first. We know that across from the right angle is the hypotenuse. The 28 degrees is between the right angle and 32 degrees, so that's the adjacent. And then the opposite is across from 32. That's where that one is. So looking at this picture, the hypotenuse is not necessary. O and A from SOHCAHTOA means that we have to do tangent. So we're going to write tangent of our angle, 32 degrees, equals, and then opposite over adjacent, x over 28. We're going to put it over 1. We're going to cross multiply. So we get 28 tangent of 32. And then we can put tangent of 32 into our calculator. We get 0.6249. Like I said before, it is okay to round when you are doing your work, but in your calculator, please keep the exact value. So I'm just going to multiply the full set of decimals by 28, and I find that the answer is 17. We're told to round to the nearest centimeter, so I'm just going to write a couple of these. 17.496. Well, that it's technically less than half, so rounding it is going to mean that we have 17 is equal to x, because we were supposed to round to the nearest centimeter. All right, so here I want you then to try solving these as well. Pause the video, and then when you are done, I will demonstrate how to solve these. All right, so part of the reason I included this is because I noticed that in the prior two examples, we just needed to cross multiply and then simplify, and we were done. These are going to be a little bit different now. So we're going to label the sides of our triangle as always. I see that 19 is the opposite. We have x as the hypotenuse. A is not necessary. There's nothing there in the picture. So that means then that when we solve this, we have to use sine, because that in SOHCAHTOA is opposite over hypotenuse. So we're going to get sine of the angle, 47 degrees, equals opposite over hypotenuse is 19 over x. Now, this is a good example of why I've been telling you to put your trig function over 1 and then cross multiply. This was the big thing that people really struggled with when I taught this in other schools. A lot of people would still tell me it's 19 times sine of 47. That's not correct. And I had the most luck fixing that mistake by telling people to cross multiply, because they realized then, oh, it's 19 times 1, which is 19, and then the other one was x times sine of 47 degrees. Now we have to find sine of 47, and that is going to be 0.7314. And now we have to divide. Again, even though I'm writing 4 decimal places on the tablet, I want you to actually use the exact value that you got in your calculator. And when you divide, you get 25 I told you to round to the nearest hundredth. 25.98 is the answer. For the second one, once again, label the 3 sides. So there is our opposite, x is our hypotenuse. We have the adjacent below. From SOHCAHTOA, this is telling us that we need to use cosine. So the middle one, we're going to set this up. Cosine of 16 degrees is equal to, oh, that didn't show up. Cosine of 16 degrees is equal to 12 over x. Put it over 1, cross multiply. X times cosine of 16 is going to be equal to 12. We need to find the cosine of 16 degrees, and that is 0.9613. And then finally, we're going to divide both sides by this decimal. And what we get is 12.48. All right, so your assignment is going to be a worksheet that will post on Schoology. I've decided that you can skip the entire first page and then you can do the second page. Don't worry, even though it's a 4-page document, that's because pages 3 and 4 are actually answers. I did make an answer key though, and I show all the work of how to get it. So thank you for listening, everybody. See ya.